Welcome to the Employer Content Show, part of the Talent Insight series brought to you by Hire Well and Before You Apply. I'm your host, James Hornick. Joining me is my co-host from Before You Apply, Nate the Great Guggia.
There we go.
Have you seen Ted Lasso?
I've just watched the first episode, but I know everybody loves it.
Yeah, well, Nate the Great, that's the reference here. I'm like, hope he has seen that show so he catches the reference, but whatever. Anyways. All right, so what we want to talk about today, this is part 2 of the series we started. It was based upon gathering real feedback from real people instead of making assumptions. What candidates want to know, the marketing edition. Now, again, just kind of doing a quick recap. The reason why we're doing this is our central thesis is if you want to attract better talent, you want to attract more talent, you can do so by talking about the things that are relevant to job seekers, job candidates, middle to late process. So things that questions they ask in interviews, things they like to dig into, things they want to know before accepting an offer, bringing that to the top of the funnel. So leading with that, since that's the stuff they really care about, which frankly, most companies do not do. I've seen very few that do, but that's what will get people interested. You just go over the top with the amount of information you provide and on the front end, and that will attract not just more people, but the right people. You'll also save time in terms of people who are going to eventually realize they're not a fit for your organization. You'll figure that stuff out sooner too. And this can all be done through content, and that can be anything. That can be a podcast, that can be social posts, that can be your job ads, that can be your recruiter outreach, that can be your imagination's the limit. But these are the things you should be talking about. So go directly to the source, and that's where we are. So we did a survey for this one. So we asked some basic questions about kind of industry level, all that kind of stuff. And this was just for marketers. There was a really broad mix of industries. So I felt like that the bases were covered there. So like public sector, manufacturing, financial services, a lot of SaaS software people, some agency people, health and wellness people, e-commerce, engineering, construction, retail, a lot of different areas were kind of represented here. It was pretty senior. So like 10% executives, 50% senior management types, maybe 30% senior executors. I think there's only one person who was kind of junior who responded. There were several dozen kind of respondees here. Half of them were looking currently, which I thought was interesting. The other half looked either this year or last year. So everyone's pretty fresh, in terms of like they've been interviewing either now or had been interviewing fairly recently and landed a job. Maybe the only question I asked to identify like what area. There are lots of digital people at this point. Everything's digital though, so maybe it was a stupid question to ask. But some people said they're more brand marketers, whatever. But anyways, so we got a lot. There were 3 main questions. They're really trying to get at the same thing. So we're trying to figure out just what do you want to know, and we kind of asked on the front end before where a recruiter reaches out to you, what would you get back on? What do you ask during the interview process? What do you ask when you're making a decision? What would you want to know? Really, it's all kind of the same thing though, because people just want to know information in different kind of stages. So we're trying to ask the same question a few different ways to get the info. And so the first thing I realized was, we talked about this before the show. It was very open-ended, and I've said this for years in a kind of half joking, half serious way. People don't know how to search for a job. Like I haven't searched for a job in 15 years. Like that's kind of the other thing, But people don't. If you ask them an open-ended question, people might not even know what to ask for. So the stuff that was actually the most common was probably the least interesting. So everyone said salary, compensation, what's the work-life balance, what's the culture like, what's the location. Okay, that's so basic. Like no one's going to come to your company because you provided that's the stuff they expect to see, not the stuff that's going to wow anybody, which is really what kind of the purpose of this was. And then what I also found interesting was there was a pretty stark contrast. You could tell right away who's been burned by a former employer because they had really granular things they look for versus who hasn't yet because they only look for the very basic stuff. And I think that the people who have been burned before, because again, this is not about how to convince those individual candidates, but how to attract more of everybody, right? And the more granular you can get with those types of things, you're doing the things that other companies wouldn't even think of doing, and you're going to stand out. But we can get into those. So I think you should kind of lead though, because you were talking about junior marketers. Because that kind of dovetails into this.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning that the show we did the previous show, the one about sales, I went into that one, like having a good number of conversations and like, I guess like I'm more of a salesperson myself. So I kind of like knew what to expect, and going into this one, I didn't know what to expect, even though like now I would very much consider myself to be more of a marketer than a salesperson. But I think I've like just kind of grown into that role like naturally. It wasn't like something like I set out to do out of school professionally, so like I didn't take this traditional path. So I kind of went into this like like super curious and not really knowing what to expect. When I looked at like the common themes of the results, I saw that junior marketers could be especially susceptible to getting burned. The reason for that is like, I think a lot of companies just don't know what they're doing when it comes to marketing. This could be a couple different reasons. It could be that like one, of course, like it's just not valued. The company doesn't like really understand why they're doing marketing. They just know that they need to do it, and that it's like the thing you do to like maybe make money, right? Like there's something there. But then also too, I mean, there could be like old school leaders who just have been in the seat for like longer than they should be and like aren't really adapting to what's like going on in the market, and they're not always like on the cutting edge. And if you're not experienced and you haven't, let's say, been burned before or experienced like the upside of like working with a CEO or a CMO who just like really gets this stuff, you're not going to know what to look for in an opportunity. And you could talk to a recruiter, or you could read a job description, or even like look at a fancy logo and think that this company knows a lot more than they actually do, and then get inside and realize like, man, this is a mess, and like I'm not going to have the opportunity to grow like I want to. And so the biggest thing that I saw for a junior person is to like really like overemphasize the value of a leader who knows what they're doing. And then, if you reverse that into the things that like we talk about, which is companies and their content, like if you have like a really smart marketer on your team, or who's leading this charge, or even a CEO who doubles as your CMO, figuring out a way to like get those thoughts out of their head and out so people can see that, it's going to go a long way.
I agree. And it's harder. It's a level more difficult than it would be communicating that to a junior marketing person than it would be a junior salesperson.
Yes.
And I only say that from the standpoint of how to articulate. How can you articulate you can do well here in sales? You can usually just show them the numbers, as long as they're real numbers of how many people are doing well, what they're making, trust the process. To an unsophisticated kind of junior level person. To marketing, it's not always that evident what good looks like. And I guess to your point, if you can get someone whoever is in charge can articulate these things in a way how we're different from other places, or here's why you should look at us versus someone else. Here's one of the challenges in the industry you need to look out for, almost as like a guidance type of thing built into your recruiting pitch.
Yeah.
So yes. And that kind of dovetails into the first one. Okay, so there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. The first three kind of dovetail together, but these are the eight findings that I thought were interesting that will differentiate you from other companies that are out there. Can't believe we've been talking for 10 minutes already here. First one, and the first one, right, is that CEO is leadership. And this was different than in the sales thing. So people were talking about describe marketing leadership. Is there a CMO, a legit CMO, not a fake VP who's reporting to who's co-reporting executive? Does marketing have a seat at the table? Who fills it? But it also kind of looped into, I think we got the same thing for a head of sales, but the thing was different here is there are a few people who are talking about not just the CMO, but the CEO, right? Because I think that's one challenge this fits with all the discourse I see kind of within the marketing community, is that does the CEO understand what the hell marketing actually does?
Yeah.
And all CEOs understand what sales does, right? Like they sell stuff, but like not all of them understand what marketing does. So there's a lot of marketers, that's probably even more true the further high you go up the chain, that want to know not just the CEO is pretty legit, but the CMO is pretty legit, but the CEO is pretty legit, and really kind of understand, is clear on the concept of what they're trying to do. does and that also kind of dovetails into like, does the CMO or the CEO see kind of this function as a support function, or do they see it as a revenue driver? I think that's one of the key, like high level, one of the key things too. I think that, and that kind of dovetails into the second thing I wanted to kind of talk about briefly, the kind of the second point, which is very related. Is it an administrative function, or is it a strategic business function? That's something that a lot of people straight up wanted to know. So are they simply keeping the train moving, or is there a plan to make it go faster, do things cheaper? Is there opportunity to make a difference, or are you just kind of taking care of the marketing basics?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I'm thinking of something, but I just want to make sure I inserted it at the right time. Go.
Yeah. And then the third part that these three kind of dove into is, what's the relationship with sales?
Yeah.
And I think that also is kind of thing. They work closely together. What kind of collaboration is there? And I think that once again goes back to, because a lot of times when people say marketing is like an administrative function, it's a sales support function in those environments versus being the actual revenue driver. And I think that, I mean, if we want to talk about all the other discourse we see kind of within the marketing community, I mean, it comes down to demand gen versus lead gen.
It does.
Right?
Yep.
So, and I think that's ultimately at the crux of this is, does the CEO, CMO, like, do they understand that difference between those two functions? Do they see this as a demand gen function when you're actually creating demand for the product, the service, whatever, driving revenue that way? Or are you just trying to get leads, a lot of which are BS leads? You're rated on how many leads you can create and pass over to the sales team.
Yeah.
Are you working for them, or are you working for the CEO to actually drive revenue? And I think that's the thing. If you can create if you're in that camp, the demand gen camp, you need to be talking about that.
You do. Yes.
Because marketers, this is like the number one, because all three of these kind of dovetail together, which is kind of one to run through real quick. This is something that everyone, especially anyone experienced right now, is really attuned to, because everyone's had the experience of working for someone who, it's a sales-driven organization that doesn't get what we're doing here in marketing. No one wants to go there again. And I feel like I still see people who, the other thing that's kind of always funny about this is like, everyone thinks they get marketing. Like every CEO in the world, like they think they get marketing, even the ones who don't, especially the ones who don't. So that's why I think it's important to, whatever your messaging is, like it has to be able to articulate on a little more granular level what the plan is, how you're rated on success, what your strategy is in place, get the CMO talking, what's their background, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Okay. So what I've been thinking about this whole time is like, as a candidate, this is hard. This isn't as easy as, like you were saying, with sales or like even like other roles. It's hard because there's so much terminology and so many things can like sound good, honestly.
Yeah.
You could throw like a bunch of words together and when it comes to marketing and go like, oh, that sounds pretty good. But like below the surface, there's a lot that goes into this function being successful. And I'm thinking like there's like this mindset and approaches to like these different types of marketing, and how just getting an explanation of like how you view brand versus demand versus lead, and like what kind of like creative runway a marketer can have like when they join your team, and the ability to both like accomplish like helping you reach business goals and like revenue objectives, and at the same time helping you like build brand. And is it just like one over the other, and like how much do you emphasize each of those? And there's just a lot that goes into this, and there's like which is like, it's great for somebody who has answers to all of those things, because that's a whole lot of content that you can create that helps guide your candidates along, and actually like enables your candidates to ask the right questions. And for more senior people who are like really thinking about this, it just answers their questions at the top of the funnel. But there's the opportunity for like really savvy marketing departments to create some cool, like how we do stuff content here. that can just be a great resource for candidates in general. I'm thinking about like, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I'm thinking about like how a marketing team can both like help their specific candidates, but also like help influence candidates in general as like, these are the things that you should be looking for in a company who gets their shit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's why I was actually this is a conversation I was having like an hour ago with someone about, I think marketing is the perfect area where the best way to attract candidates is just giving away your cookbook, talking about what your actual process is, how you're going about it, what your playbook is, because it's not like sales where someone can replicate your exact pitch to your exact same clients. You know what I mean? If they're in a different marketing, different niche, like it's not a zero-sum game, but it's also it's an opportunity to actually display how you think differently about whatever kind of business problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So you're doing exactly that. Instead of just saying we value marketing, like you're actually explaining how. You know what I mean? And at the same time too, you're building credibility because, and I'm a firm believer that anytime you can teach someone something they don't know, you're getting cred points. And that can be for if you're trying to make a sale, if you're trying to hire somebody. And in this case, trying to hire people. But I see there being zero downside to, as part of your hiring plan for marketers, giving away kind of your playbook for what you're doing right now, because the amount of credibility you'll get from that and amount of discussions you'll actually be able to start with people from that, I think is just, I don't know why you wouldn't do it.
That's a great point. Yeah. And here's the great thing too, is like, we talk a lot about different departments creating content and sales, whatever. And like a lot of those departments really struggle with distribution. They don't know how to distribute content. We're talking about marketers whose job is to distribute, and they have the creative resources.
Yeah. That's why it drives me crazy. So when we were talking about, in the last show, we talked about salespeople. The biggest opportunity in sales was, get your sales leaders talking about becoming knowledge domain leaders. Why? Because salespeople are on LinkedIn all damn day. Right. So everyone you want to hire is literally there ready to listen to you if you're a sales leader and want to talk. Marketing it's slightly different. Same concept. It's not so much about being a vocal, but it's not so much about just kind of talking and helping people how do you become better at sales, and this is what we're excited about. But it is more about showing people how it's done and why your organization does things a certain way, or just using the channels the same way you would for hiring that you would for whatever your service or whatever your product is. If you're able to target people the same way with content or with whatever other kind of methods you use, like they're going to notice. They're marketers. Just thought.
Yes, totally.
I love it when I leave you speechless. Okay. Moving on.
Yeah. I just fully agree.
All right. So this one, okay. So the next thing, those are kind of the first three things called. So we talked about CEO/CMO leadership. We talking about marketing being an administrative function versus strategic business function and the relationship with sales. And they're obviously three different things, but they're kind of tightly intertwined in that. Next thing was overview of strategy that the org is currently using and what the marketing engine looks like now. So like current versus future state. And I think this also, this encompasses a few different things. So, what's your personnel look like currently? What channels are you doing currently? What are you looking to get into? Like, what's the change that's going to happen? You know what I mean? If you're hiring for a position, you have to assume on some level it's either a replacement hire, which you need to talk about. That's another conversation entirely, or it's a net new hire for some other thing you're trying to do. So, and I think it's more, so a lot of times recruiters or people talk about this is a net new hire, but what's important is, okay, but why? Why, if it's a net new hire, what's the reason? What's the project? What's kind of driving that? What's that future state you're trying to get towards? That's the things that people find interesting, not the fact that it's a new position. Other comments that were kind of built into this, I'm just kind of going through the survey kind of results. Gaps within, what other gaps are there? So every marketing organization is limited on resources. Once you make this hire, what are the next gaps you have? Like, what are the opportunities other opportunities there could be within the marketing plan for this person potentially to kind of fill in. Budgets. Do you have a budget? That's always a big one. Do you have a budget? Is the budget growing? Do you have money to do any of the stuff you're talking about? That's something people want to know. Organizational structure exists, marketing team, where the open position fits. Okay, yeah. So
yeah,
all those things.
Oh yeah, okay. I had an example of like the future or the future state or the direction that you're going in. Like an example that I'm seeing a lot right now, which is like a pretty hot topic in SaaS, is product led versus sales led, and how there's a lot of like enterprise tech companies that have always been sales led that are now moving in a product led direction or trying to, right? Yeah. It's like, it's slowly starting to happen. And over like the next like 5 or 10 years is probably just going to become like standard practice that you have like a product led motion some way, which is, that's very marketing driven. And I think like something there, like you're going to see like a big, like probably a lot of hiring for those types of marketers who know how to, like product marketers and know how to plug themselves into product led companies. But like, that's just like one example of like, here we are as a company today. This is the direction we're going in. This is why we're hiring those types of people. And here's the exciting things that you will be part of building. Like, that's extremely compelling to a good marketer. Anyway, that just popped into my mind. Another thing that I was thinking about too is like, there's no Swiss Army knife marketers, but I think a lot of job descriptions are probably written like they are.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so you could say this about every skill set, but marketing in particular, the amount of times that I'm used to seeing job descriptions written to include everything, like you said. And then when you do an intake call with a client or with a company, you find out, okay, that it's actually very specifically defined. There's actually something that's important. Everything else is garbage. Not garbage, but everything else is someone else's purview and not that important. But to your point, getting down to that, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like a company who realizes that and knows how to leverage somebody's expertise and plug them into either a system that is built to leverage those expertise, or if you're coming in as like maybe marketing leader 1, those are just like good things to know. Like, hey, I'm a really good demand marketer. I'm a really good brand marketer. And am I going to have the ability to build a team around me that is going to strengthen my weaknesses? Like, that's really important because like no company should expect one person to be great at like all aspects of marketing. It's just like, it's too nuanced. So that's just like another talking point for both candidates and companies, I guess. But that's just like also making me think that like there's advantages to being early in, maybe like after you've like cut your teeth at like a big company, or you've been part of a team and like maybe you've been under like a really smart leader. Being early in has its advantages because you get to potentially do the things that I just talked about. So if you're a startup and you're hiring marketing lead 1 or something like that, I mean, it's important to like underscore those growth opportunities and the way you think about giving this person like the ability to build around them and your mindset and stuff. It just like, I think it, anyway.
No, I'm following.
Yeah, I know.
I'm excited about this next one.
All right.
Because I thought it was pretty good. Only 2 people put this one down. But I actually think if this is something that'll stand out, companies' prospects for success. As one person said, I always like to see the company's pitch deck to investors. Usually get turned down, but sometimes I have to sign an NDA to get it. Another person said the investment thesis of the business. What are the business objectives? How much marketing may be expected to contribute with actual hard numbers and metrics. Then also talk about what are the resources and whatnot. I thought this was really cool because it ultimately gets down to what does success look like and is it realistic? This is how you can really easily tell, back to kind of initial things we talked about, Does the CEO even understand like what good looks like here? Does they actually understand? Does your CMO, is it a real CMO that actually has a plan they can kind of that's achievable? Are you setting yourself up for success? If there's equity involved in this organization, is that going to amount to anything someday, or are they completely dreaming? Will it look good in your resume? Are you going to be able to tell a success story out of this, or are they jokers? So, but I do think that because the success or failure of the marketing function is directly tied to how it can impact the business and is going to work out. There are marketers out there that are based upon this that want to know that kind of stuff. And if you have a story to tell, if you can talk about kind of what the long-term goals are, the company prospects are, and these types of things, like that's something you definitely should talk about, because again, these are things a lot of organizations don't even touch. So
yeah, that's a gutsy move. I love it. It's great though, because especially like earlier stage companies, everybody thinks they're going to go public, and everybody, like, I don't know how many times I've been told that. It's just like, check that against the reality of like all companies that ever achieve that versus, and how much anybody cares about your market. And like, I don't know, like looking inside, like the investor angle is really smart. It will show you a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Another one that's kind of fundamental. I'm surprised this one didn't come up more. A deep dive on the customer and why they buy the product. That's really what it comes down. It's not so much that we what's your product and who's buying it, but can you articulate how this thing should be marketed? Can you articulate why anybody's buying this thing and what the value is? If you can't, do you know, like, and if you can't do that and you're trying to hire a marketer, I just thought that's a bit of a red flag,
I know.
And granted, it's the marketing person's job to kind of figure some of that out, or figure out how to market it. But at the same time too, like the basics of like, here's why the product's valuable and here's who's going to buy it. Like, how good of a story can you tell there? It also kind of leads itself back to that last point about how realistic is all this, because it's not just about the product and who you're selling it to, but leadership's ability to articulate that to you. And if they can't do it, that's a red flag.
Man, I can count a number of times early on when I just did not know how to evaluate a product or a company or a founder. And man, I had shiny object syndrome, and like I learned a lot. But these kinds of questions like get to the heart of it. I think like, oh gosh, man, practicality matters so much.
Yeah. But if you can, so turning this back into, the content around this, if you can articulate at the top of the funnel when you're trying to attract candidates, what your company actually, because that's the thing. I will say this a lot too. Like most of the job ads you look at look like most of the things you look like. They are very position focused. Here's the role. Here's a description. Most of them are lacking, but here's what our company really does. Here's the value we provide to our clients. Here's why people use us. And if you can make that make sense to somebody, the details of the position don't even matter as much, I think. It's the less relevant part of the story.
One of the questions we ask in the content that we create is, how does your company make money? It's like a simple question.
Yeah.
That helps team members provide simple, straightforward answers. Well, we make money by, we have this thing and we sell it this way and people pay, it's like, it just breaks it down to the most like elementary level.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff's helpful.
Okay. Got a few more here. So there were some interesting hiring manager questions. And I think this kind of goes back to what we talked about, in the last show, talking about, I don't know if we need to kind of rehash the entire thing again, but why your leaders should be vocal. But there were a lot of people who had questions, like they want to know, what's the department turnover over the last couple of years? What's the manager's tenure and background? What's the relationships between departments? How long does a manager or hiring person see himself or herself with the company? What's their career path? not just your own career path, but what are they trying to achieve? Where are they trying to go next? Someone else, this is questions, the way we phrase this question, you ask the interview process, asking the CMO or the head of marketing, like, how do you feel valued in your job? So extrapolating, kind of turning that back around, these are things that if you can get the CMO, the head of marketing for your organization, to talk about why they love it there, what they're excited about, whether they want to go next, why they feel valued in a job, these are the things that will also resonate.
Mm-hmm.
Not something I see very often, but
I know.
Telling you, it'll work. Those are the core things. The last one actually didn't have as much to do with marketing, but I liked it anyway, and it kind of hits on the topic that we've been kicking around our content team. Something we want to talk about, and Jeff Smith and I might be doing a show on this soon. Companies' DEI initiatives and their impact, back it up with data. So I thought there were two things interesting about this. A year ago is when the world started. Everyone was talking about DEI a year ago at this time.
Okay.
Biggest, hottest topic. Companies were hiring heads of diversity, all these types of things. I'm not seeing that same level of noise publicly at this point. What we're interested in, I don't have the answer for this, I'm saying, by the way, but This person said there's something on the top of their mind. I know they're not the only one. Where did all that go? Like, which companies stuck with it, stayed the course, actually delivered on it? It wasn't just lip service, but they had a goal and they're still working towards it and can show numbers around that. Versus which companies, that was the shiny object last year we felt like we had to do because everyone else is doing, and we moved on 6 months ago. It's not really a priority anymore. Because that's important, not just from a diversity perspective, which is the core questions person asking, but the are you bullshit or not perspective. Like, I'm not going to fault anyone for how much time or effort they did or didn't put into a year ago, but kudos to those who stuck with it, and a big WTF to everyone who talked a big game but never followed through.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. I think you do this too, but like, I just think in posts all the time. So I'm like thinking of like a lead into like a killer post from somebody, which is like a year ago, everybody was talking about this, but many companies dropped it. Here's what we're doing.
But it's okay. Not even, but it is about DEI, because that's what this person said they're basing part of their decision on. But it's also, this whole conversation has been about strategic thinking and follow through, because that's really what marketing. That's what, if you're a marketer, you want to go to a place that can actually like have a vision, and it's a real vision, and they follow through on it. They have a marketing plan, they stick to it. There's actually this growth opportunity. It's not just lip service, which it is in a lot of organizations when it turns out to be sales support. But here's a prime example, because I believe that companies, when they make decisions, they do it all in the same manner. There's just places that have follow through, or there's places that, because whether it's DEI or whether it's just like some new thing in marketing that you gave up on, you're going to give up on that 6 months later once it starts to get tough, or once the interest in it wanes or something like that. And I think that's important to know too. And I think that will, if you can tell stories about how your kind of company sticks the course with whether it's DEI or something else, that's also something that people will be attracted to, versus places that, just lose interest in stuff. So,
yeah. Okay. I was going to you want me to do a quick, I have some bullet points that I think
those are the last things. I can run through those things again at the end here, but go
ahead. Okay. Let me see. Patterns and themes that I saw. Okay. Transparent comp up front, look inside leadership mindset, team structure, and how do members of the team think about the work that they're doing. Clear expectations, aka does this company even know what they want out of marketing? Mm-hmm. Does the CEO/leadership value marketing? If so, why? Is there the ability to have creative runway, or am I just an order taker? And do I have an opportunity to succeed with, or even I think opportunity to succeed with or without product market fit, depending on the stage of the company. I think that really is more about like going back to one, previous questions about like CEO and leadership valuing the function and setting you up for success.
Yeah.
That's what I saw.
That was a perfect summary. I'm glad you did that, because that was what I was going to revert back to. So
cool.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
There you go. Let's end.
Okay.
Let's each name one or a couple marketers who we like to follow.
Sure. Cassidy Shield, Narrative Science.
Oh yeah, Cassidy's
awesome. You should definitely follow him.
Okay, Chris Walker. We mention him all the time. I think Chris's stuff is awesome. There's somebody new I've been following, Andrew Kaplan, Capland. Okay. He was in-house for quite a while. He just moved independent. He posts some really great stuff. Tactical.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the name again?
Andrew Kaplan.
Andrew Kaplan. I'll look him up.
Yeah, look him up.
Andrew Kaplan, Cassidy Shield, Chris Walker, all those three.
Oh, MJ is good, right?
Yeah. I kind of now that she's refined, they're all MJ's good. Their whole staff's good, right? So it's
I know, they really are. Yeah, they're MJ Peters. All right, man.
Cool. All right. That is a wrap for the Employer Content Show. If you want to hear more of what Nate and I have to say, you can subscribe to the Hire Well channel on YouTube, where we have a playlist of all of our episodes, and the Talent Insights podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and Spotify. Nate, thanks again. Everyone out there. See you soon.